Country music has always been built on stories of heartbreak, faith, and survival. But what happens when the stars themselves become the story? Behind the rhinestones, glitter, and carefully crafted images, the women who ruled country music carried secrets that tabloids devoured and rumors that never seemed to fade. These were not just singers, they were divas, pioneers who broke rules and challenged traditions, all while navigating scandals that could have ended their careers. Some were accused of affairs, others were criticized for being too bold, and many battled heartbreak in the public eye. From Patsy Cline's fiery reputation to Tammy Wynette's turbulent marriages, from Dolly Parton's constant rumors to Tanya Tucker's rebellious youth, the truth is that the divas of country lived in a spotlight that never dimmed, even when the stories got ugly. In this video, we'll pull back the curtain on 10 classic country music divas whose scandals, feuds, and untold struggles shocked Nashville, and yet only cemented their place as legends. Patsy Cline was more than just a voice. She was a force of nature in an era when women in country music were expected to stay quiet, smile, and play the part. Born Virginia Patterson Hensley, she transformed herself into Patsy Cline, a name that became synonymous with raw emotion and timeless ballads. But behind the music, Patsy was known in Nashville circles as fiery, outspoken, and unwilling to be controlled. At a time when female artists were pressured to obey record executives and managers, Patsy demanded respect. She fought for fair pay, argued with producers about song choices, and wasn't afraid to let anyone know when she felt slighted. That boldness earned her admiration from fans, but it also made her the subject of endless rumors. Some in the industry whispered about her personal life, suggesting she was too friendly with certain men or that her marriages were far from picture-perfect. She married Gerald Cline, a union that ended in divorce, and later wed Charlie Dick, a relationship that was passionate, turbulent, and full of the kind of fire that fueled tabloid gossip. Friends recalled heated arguments, reconciliations, and the undeniable electricity between them. Nashville insiders whispered that Patsy lived with the same intensity offstage as she sang on stage, and that kind of energy naturally sparked stories. Stories the press loved to magnify. Yet Patsy didn't shy away from controversy. She spoke openly about being frustrated with the double standards in country music, once declaring that women deserved to stand on the same stage as men, not just be supporting acts. She smoked, she swore, she partied, and she carried herself with a toughness that many male stars respected, but some feared. When she joined the Grand Ole Opry, she didn't just take a spot in the cast, she shook up the culture. The tabloids, hungry for drama, painted her as a diva, a woman too bold for her own good. But in truth, Patsy was carving a path for future generations of country stars. Tragically, her life was cut short in a plane crash in 1963, a death that froze her in time as both an icon and a mystery. In the aftermath, the rumors only grew louder. Some claimed she had unfinished business in Nashville. Others hinted at secrets never revealed. But what is undeniable is that Patsy Cline became larger than life. A country diva whose mix of talent, controversy, and tragedy made her unforgettable. Her scandals may have been exaggerated. Her reputation may have been painted with gossip. But Patsy never apologized for who she was. And that is why she remains one of the most powerful legends in country music history. Tammy Wynette, forever remembered as the First Lady of country music, built her career on songs that spoke directly to the struggles of women. But her own life behind the microphone was filled with turbulence, heartbreak, and controversy that often overshadowed her music. Born Virginia Wynette Pugh, She grew up picking cotton in Mississippi before clawing her way into Nashville. And when she finally broke through, she did so with a song that would both define and haunt her. Stand by Your Man. The song became an anthem, celebrated by many as a powerful declaration of loyalty, but also condemned by critics who said it encouraged women to tolerate abuse and betrayal. Tammy herself admitted she never fully stood by all the words she sang, but the controversy made her one of the most talked about women in country music. Off-stage, her personal life fueled the tabloids even more than her career. Tammy was married 5 times, and each marriage came with its own drama. Her relationship with country legend George Jones was the most infamous, filled with passion, music, and destructive fights that the press couldn't resist covering. Together they recorded timeless duets, but behind closed doors there were violent arguments, separations, reconciliations, and stories of George's alcoholism that made national headlines. Fans were fascinated and heartbroken as Tammy tried to live out the same loyalty her most famous song preached. But the reality was chaos. Beyond her marriages, Tammy struggled with serious health issues, undergoing dozens of surgeries and relying on pain medication that would lead to addiction. Rumors spread through Nashville that her illnesses weren't always what they seemed, and whispers about the true cause of her pain added to the mystery. When she was found unconscious at times or missed performances, the press speculated wildly, portraying her as both a tragic victim and a troubled diva. Tammy also had her share of rumored affairs and relationships that never made the official record, but kept her name in Nashville gossip circles. Even her kidnapping in 1978, a bizarre and still debated incident in which she claimed she was abducted at gunpoint, sparked conspiracy theories, with some believing she fabricated parts of the story to cover personal turmoil. Through it all, Tammy never stopped performing, never stopped singing about love, heartbreak, and loyalty, even as her own life seemed to contradict the fairy tale image her label wanted to sell. By the time of her passing in 1998, she had become not just a country icon, but a symbol of survival through scandal, pain, and relentless public scrutiny. Tammy Wynette's story proved that behind the glittering gowns and polished stage presence was a woman whose life was every bit as dramatic as the songs she sang, a diva who lived and lost under the harsh glare of Nashville's spotlight. Loretta Lynn's story is the definition of the American dream, a coal miner's daughter who rose from poverty in the Kentucky hills to become one of the most powerful voices in country music history. But her journey to superstardom was never smooth, and controversy seemed to follow her at every turn. Unlike many of her peers, Loretta refused to shy away from subjects that polite society and conservative radio stations considered off-limits. She sang about birth control in The Pill, divorce in Rated X, and cheating husbands in Don't Come Home a-Drinkin', with Lovin' on Your Mind. These songs weren't just catchy, they were revolutionary, and they caused radio stations across the country to ban her music. Yet while she was being criticized for being too outspoken, fans embraced her as the voice of real women living real struggles. Loretta knew controversy could end her career, but she never backed down, insisting that her songs reflected the truth of her audience. Away from the stage, her personal life only added to the storms around her. She married Oliver Doolittle Lynn at just 15, a marriage that would last nearly 50 years, but was marked by infidelity, alcohol abuse, and explosive arguments. Loretta admitted in her autobiography that Do cheated on her, abandoned her, and even got another woman pregnant during their marriage, yet she stayed with him, calling their love both toxic and unbreakable. To outsiders, it made no sense, but to Loretta, it was her reality, and she poured that pain into her music. Nashville insiders often gossiped about her temper, her blunt honesty, and her willingness to call out anyone who crossed her. When she felt disrespected, she wasn't afraid to confront male stars, managers, or executives, earning her both admiration and enemies. She also sparked feuds with other female performers who thought her rising fame came at their expense, and the tabloids eagerly reported every rumor. Yet Loretta had a gift for turning controversy into fuel, wearing the criticism like armor. Her 1976 memoir, Coal Miner's Daughter, laid bare much of her life's drama, and instead of tarnishing her image, it made her even more beloved. By exposing her flaws, she reminded fans she was one of them, a woman fighting to be heard in a world that tried to silence her. Of all the country divas, Loretta may have been the most fearless in tackling taboo subjects, and her determination to stay true to her voice transformed her into both an icon and a lightning rod. Even late in her career, critics and fans continued to debate whether she was too bold or just brutally honest. But one thing is clear: Loretta Lynn's controversies did not break her. They cemented her as one of the most authentic, unapologetic legends in the history of country music. Dolly Parton may be one of the most beloved figures in music history, but behind the sequins, wigs, and dazzling smile is a woman who spent decades navigating rumors, scandals, and relentless public curiosity. From the very start of her career, Dolly was different. She didn't just want to be a singer, she wanted to be a star. When she left Porter Wagoner's television show to launch her solo career in the 1970s, it caused one of the most talked-about splits in country music history. Porter accused her of betrayal, sued her for breach of contract, and turned their professional breakup into a public feud that tabloids feasted on. Dolly, in turn, wrote "I Will Always Love You" as a farewell to him, a song that turned pain into poetry. But as her fame grew, so did the gossip. Dolly's voluptuous figure and flamboyant style made her a tabloid favorite, and speculation about her personal life became constant. Rumors of affairs, whispers about her marriage to Carl Dean, and questions about her friendships with men like Kenny Rogers kept her name circulating far beyond the music charts. The truth, however, was always just out of reach, because Dolly became a master at controlling her image. She gave just enough to fuel curiosity, but kept her private life fiercely guarded. When reporters pressed her about affairs or her mysterious marriage, she would laugh, crack a joke, and move on, letting the rumors swirl without ever confirming or denying them. There were also controversies about her appearance. Critics mocked her wigs, makeup, and cosmetic surgery, suggesting she was too fake for a genre that prided itself on authenticity. But Dolly turned that criticism into a weapon, famously declaring, "It takes a lot of money to look this cheap," flipping the insult into a brand. She leaned into the caricature, turning herself into both a punchline and a legend, and in doing so, she robbed the tabloids of their power over her. Yet Dolly wasn't without struggles. Business dealings, failed film projects, and accusations of being too commercial often dogged her career. Traditionalists accused her of abandoning country music for pop stardom, while feminists debated whether her glamorous image reinforced stereotypes or cleverly subverted them. Through it all, Dolly stayed one step ahead, using controversy to keep herself in the spotlight without ever letting it define her. Unlike other divas who were consumed by scandal, Dolly turned it into a spotlight, reshaping herself as more than a singer. She became an institution. Decades later, when asked about the endless gossip, she admitted that mystery was part of her magic. Dolly Parton knew that the world wanted to speculate, and instead of fighting it, she gave them something to talk about while keeping her truth her own. That balance of openness and secrecy, scandal and stardom, is what transformed her from a simple country girl into one of the most enduring legends in music history. Reba McEntire has long been considered America's sweetheart in country music, a woman whose fiery red hair, powerhouse vocals, and humble Oklahoma roots made her one of the most admired performers of her generation. But even Reba, who carefully cultivated an image of professionalism and grace, was not immune to the rumors and controversies that come with fame. From the beginning, Reba was determined to stand apart, blending traditional country with a modern flair that appealed to both Nashville insiders and mainstream audiences. Yet as her star rose in the 1980s and 1990s, whispers about her personal life began to creep into the spotlight. Her marriage to Narvel Blackstock, who started as her steel guitar player before becoming her manager, raised eyebrows in Nashville. Some accused Narvel of using his influence to control Reba's career, while others speculated about tension within the band when their relationship became public. Later, their divorce, after more than 25 years of marriage, shocked fans who thought Reba's life was picture-perfect, and gossip outlets churned out stories about what went wrong behind closed doors. Beyond her marriage, Reba was often accused of being fiercely competitive, a quality that won her respect, but also painted her as difficult in an industry that often labeled ambitious women as divas. When she began dominating awards shows, critics suggested she used her influence to edge out other female performers. Reba herself dismissed these claims, but they stuck to her image, fueling debates about whether she was as sweet off stage as she appeared on camera. She also faced controversies over her musical choices. Traditionalists accused her of straying too far from pure country, especially when her sound leaned into pop production. Her bold fashion statements and dramatic stage performances, complete with costume changes and theatrical lighting, were criticized by some as being too Hollywood for Nashville. But for every critic, there were legions of fans who adored her for pushing boundaries. Perhaps the most tragic moment of Reba's life also became one of her most scrutinized. In 1991, a plane crash killed 7 members of her band and her tour manager, a devastating loss that nearly ended her career. While Reba openly mourned, tabloids twisted the tragedy, speculating about lawsuits, safety negligence, and whether she would ever recover. Through tears and heartbreak, she faced an avalanche of media attention that questioned her resilience. But ultimately, she emerged stronger, turning her grief into fuel for one of her most successful albums, For My Broken Heart. Despite decades of gossip, whether about her marriages, her business decisions, or her ambition, Reba never let scandal define her. She responded with a steady grace, carefully choosing what to reveal and what to keep private, creating an image that was equal parts vulnerable and untouchable. Today, Reba is celebrated as one of the greatest female performers in country music history, proof that even America's sweetheart was not immune to the glare of rumors, but also proof that, with talent and determination, controversy can be outshined by legacy. If country music ever had a true wild child, it was Tanya Tucker. Bursting onto the scene at just 13 years old with her breakout hit Delta Dawn, Tanya was instantly labeled a prodigy, but growing up under the spotlight came with a price. Unlike many of her contemporaries who worked hard to protect wholesome images, Tanya embraced a rebellious streak that made her both a tabloid favorite and an industry headache. From the very beginning, Nashville insiders whispered about her bold personality and refusal to play by the rules. She smoked, she drank, and she carried herself with the swagger of a seasoned star even when she was still a teenager. That rebellious spirit, combined with her striking beauty, fueled constant speculation about her personal life. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, Tanya's reputation was cemented as country's bad girl, a label that both hurt and helped her career. High-profile romances kept her name in headlines. Her relationship with Glenn Campbell, more than 2 decades her senior, was one of the most scandalous pairings in country history. The affair was passionate and very public, with paparazzi capturing their fiery arguments as often as their tender moments. When the relationship crumbled, both artists spoke candidly about the chaos, giving tabloids endless material. Tanya's battles with substance abuse also became fuel for speculation. Rumors of cocaine use, wild parties, and missed performances plagued her career in the 1980s, with critics quick to label her a cautionary tale. She disappeared from the spotlight more than once, only to return with a defiant energy that reminded fans she wasn't going anywhere. Her wild reputation overshadowed her undeniable talent, but Tanya seemed to relish the controversy, joking in interviews that the rumors kept her name alive even when her songs weren't topping the charts. Her comeback in the late 1980s and early 1990s proved her resilience, but even then, she couldn't escape gossip. Stories about feuds with other female stars, whispers about her relationships, and speculation about her family life continued to swirl. Yet unlike many of her peers who worked tirelessly to silence scandal, Tanya leaned into it. She openly admitted her mistakes, laughed about her hell-raising days, and built a brand around her refusal to be tamed. Fans admired her honesty, while critics couldn't deny that she embodied the outlaw spirit more authentically than most men in the business. Tanya Tucker may not have been the polished diva Nashville executives dreamed of, but she was the one audiences couldn't look away from. Her life was messy, her choices often questioned, but her music was undeniable, and her survival through decades of gossip and scandal made her a living legend. In the end, Tanya's greatest scandal was also her greatest strength. She was unapologetically herself in a world that demanded conformity. Not every country diva's scandals played out in fiery headlines, but even those who seemed polished and untouchable carried stories that kept Nashville buzzing. Barbara Mandrell, the glamorous star of the 1970s and 1980s, was admired for her elegance and versatility, but her career took a dramatic turn after a near-fatal car accident in 1984. The crash left her with serious injuries, and while fans sympathized, the aftermath drew uncomfortable scrutiny. Lawsuits, insurance disputes, and whispers about whether she'd return to the stage dominated the press, with some suggesting her image as the perfect country lady was shattered. Barbara did make a comeback, but she eventually retired quietly in the 1990s, leaving many to speculate about whether the scandals surrounding the accident influenced her decision. Long before Barbara, Kitty Wells had already stirred controversy simply by daring to exist as a successful woman in a man's game. Her 1952 hit, "It Wasn't God Who Made Honky Tonk Angels," was revolutionary, challenging the idea that women alone bore the blame for broken marriages. The song was banned by radio stations, condemned by church leaders, and labeled scandalous for its time. Kitty's quiet but defiant stance opened the door for every female star who followed, though she too faced rumors about being too bold and upsetting Nashville's traditionalists. Other divas faced their share of whispers as well. June Carter Cash, despite her beloved marriage to Johnny, endured speculation about the beginnings of their relationship, with some critics calling her the woman who broke up his first marriage. Crystal Gayle, Dolly Parton's glamorous sister, faced gossip that her fame relied too heavily on her family name. Even Barbara Fairchild, remembered for the hit "The Teddy Bear Song," found herself boxed in by critics who thought her wholesome image hid more complicated truths. What ties these women together is the fact that even when their scandals were smaller, quieter, or rooted more in cultural shifts than personal drama, they were still judged and picked apart under the glare of public opinion. The so-called hidden stories of these stars show that in Nashville, even the most virtuous or groundbreaking artists could not escape the shadow of rumor. Whether it was an accident, a song deemed too radical, or simply being a woman with ambition, controversy was always close by. These divas may not have courted scandal the way others did, but the gossip around them proved that no woman in country music was truly untouchable. When we look back at the great divas of classic country music, one truth stands out above all else. Their careers were never defined solely by their voices, but also by the storms of controversy that surrounded them. Patsy Cline's fiery spirit, Tammy Wynette's troubled marriages, Loretta Lynn's fearless songwriting, Dolly Parton's masterful balancing act of mystery and scandal, Reba McEntire's carefully polished image tested by whispers of rivalry, Tanya Tucker's wild child chaos, Barbara Mandrell's tragic accident, Kitty Wells's revolutionary defiance, and so many others prove that Nashville has always thrived on more than just music. It has thrived on stories, some true, some exaggerated, and some whispered into legend. These women faced an industry that was relentless in its judgment. They were criticized for being too bold, too ambitious, too sexual, too outspoken, or simply for refusing to stay silent. They were judged for their marriages, their clothes, their choices, and even for the very songs that gave voice to millions of fans who saw themselves in every lyric. Yet, through it all, each of these divas turned controversy into part of their legacy. Instead of being crushed by rumor, they often rose stronger, reshaping the narrative to their advantage. Dolly laughed at the tabloids and turned them into free publicity. Loretta dared radio stations to ban her songs and, in doing so, connected more deeply with her audience. Tanya Tucker leaned into her bad girl image and wore it like a badge of honor. Even Tammy Wynette, who often seemed trapped by her own myth, sang with such conviction that fans loved her all the more for her struggles. Scandal never destroyed them. It made them unforgettable. In a sense, these women weren't just country singers. They were architects of their own myths, shaping identities that blended truth and rumor into something larger than life. Their controversies remind us that country music was never just about twangy guitars or heartfelt ballads. It was about survival, about carving out a place in a world that didn't want women to lead. Today, their legacies shine brighter than any headline. The rumors have faded, but the music remains, echoing through generations of fans who see these women not as victims of gossip, but as warriors who transformed pain, scandal, and scrutiny into timeless art. The divas of classic country lived lives that were messy, complicated, and scandalous. But above all, they lived boldly, leaving behind legacies that can never be erased.